There is a moment, and if you've lived it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, when something shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a light being turned on in a room that was dark for far too long. You stopped reacting the way you used to. You stopped apologizing for things that weren't your fault. You stopped shrinking yourself to make someone else feel bigger. And somewhere in that stillness, in that new and hard-won peace you finally found, someone noticed. Someone who had built their entire relationship with you on the assumption that you would always be available to be moved, shaken, doubted, and dismantled. And when they saw that you were no longer that person, when they looked into your eyes and found something steady, something unreadable, something they could no longer control, something changed in them too. Not for the better, for something far more dangerous. What I'm about to share with you is not theory. It is not generic advice pulled from a textbook. It is the psychological reality of what happens inside a narcissist when they realize, truly realize, that you are no longer theirs to manipulate. And more importantly, I'm going to tell you exactly what they do next. Because there is one final move they make, one last dirty trick. And if you don't know it's coming, it will catch you completely off guard, even now, even after everything you've survived. If this kind of deep psychological truth is something you need in your life right now, and I think it is because you're still here, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Every single week, content like this is waiting for you. Content that doesn't talk down to you, doesn't offer empty affirmations, but instead gives you the raw, precise psychological understanding you need to protect yourself and rebuild your life. Subscribe now, stay with me, because this one is important. There comes a point in the life of anyone who has been entangled with a narcissist when something inside them simply exhausts itself. Not in the way of giving up, in the way of waking up. You reach the floor of the pain. You sit there long enough that the floor starts to feel familiar. And slowly, from that place of absolute depletion, something in you reorganizes. The part of you that spent years trying to be enough, trying to understand them, trying to fix what could never be fixed, that part gets tired in a way that becomes wisdom. You stop trying to decode their moods. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head at 3 in the morning. You stop waiting for the apology that was never going to come. And that stopping, that withdrawal of your desperate, aching energy, is the most powerful thing you have ever done. Even if it didn't feel powerful at the time, even if it felt like numbness, even if it felt like loss. But here's what you didn't fully see in that moment. They felt it immediately. Narcissists are exquisitely attuned to one thing and one thing only, the emotional energy of the people around them. They may seem oblivious to your pain, indifferent to your needs, incapable of empathy in the normal human sense, but they are not oblivious to your attention. They are not indifferent to your focus. They are deeply sensitive, not emotionally, but strategically, to the presence or absence of your engagement. And when your engagement begins to withdraw, when the desperate edge in your voice disappears, when you stop chasing, stop begging, stop explaining, they feel it like a shift in atmospheric pressure, like the air changing before a storm, and it unsettles them in ways they cannot fully articulate even to themselves. Your strength did not go unnoticed. Your healing was not invisible. The moment you began to reclaim yourself, a clock started ticking in them. A quiet panic began to build beneath the surface of their carefully constructed composure. Because you were never just a person to them. You were a resource, a mirror, a supply. And supply does not simply walk away without consequence, at least not in the narcissist psychological world. Supply is supposed to stay. Supply is supposed to orbit. Supply is supposed to be perpetually available, perpetually affected, perpetually reachable. And you had the audacity to become something else entirely. So they began to adjust. They began to recalibrate. They watched you from a new distance, trying to find the crack in the armor, the thread they could still pull. And when they couldn't find one easily, when the usual tools stopped working, when guilt tripping landed flat, when silent treatment no longer brought you crawling back, when provocations failed to provoke, something shifted in them too. Something colder, something more deliberate, something that most people who study narcissism don't talk about nearly enough. This is when the final tactic begins. The final tactic doesn't look like what you'd expect. It doesn't arrive with the drama and cruelty of the early cycles you lived through. It doesn't look like rage or punishment or the cold, calculated devaluation you already know how to recognize. It is far more subtle than that, far more sophisticated. And because it comes dressed in something that looks almost like decency, almost like change, almost like the person you always wanted them to be, it is the most dangerous move they make. What the narcissist does, when they finally accept that their usual arsenal has failed, is this. They perform a transformation. Not a real one, a performed one. They manufacture with remarkable precision the exact version of themselves that you always needed them to be. The version that would have kept you. The version you grieved the loss of 1,000 times. They become, or rather they appear to become, reflective, remorseful, awakened, self-aware. And they bring this new version to your door with a kind of softness and sincerity that feels, against all your hard-won logic, utterly real. This is the Hoover maneuver at its highest level of psychological sophistication. And what makes it different from the early stage Hoovers, the texts, the grand gestures, the cycling back to love bombing, is the depth of the performance and the precision of its targeting. In the early cycles, they came back with attention and affection. Now they come back with apparent growth, because they have watched you. They have paid attention to your evolution, your language, your boundaries. They have listened, perhaps without you even realizing it, to what finally pushed you away. And they have constructed a response so carefully tailored to your specific psychology that it can feel, even to someone who knows better, like a genuine miracle. They will say things that sound like the words of someone who has done real inner work. They will acknowledge specific hurts. They will use the vocabulary of accountability. They will create a space that feels safe, deliberately, strategically, artfully safe, because they know that safety is what broke you open. And they are going to offer you a facsimile of that safety so convincing that every part of you that still holds love for who they could have been will lean forward and whisper, maybe this time. This is the trick. This is the last dirty trick. And it works when it works. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. Because you have a heart that genuinely wanted repair. Because you carry within you an innate, beautiful capacity for hope and belief in change. And they are using that against you. They have always used it against you. But now they are using it with a level of precision they have never used before. Because this is their last move. Some part of them knows that if this doesn't work, you are truly gone. And so they bring everything they have to this final attempt. Understanding why this happens requires you to look at what is happening inside them. Not with compassion that excuses them, but with clear-eyed psychological precision that protects you. When a narcissist loses control of someone they once held tightly in their psychological grip, they experience something that functions in their internal world like an identity crisis. Because you were part of the architecture of their self-concept, your admiration, your attention, your fear, your devotion, these were load-bearing walls in the structure of their fragile inner world. And when you withdrew, when you became strong enough to live without the constant turbulence they created, you didn't just leave a relationship. You destabilized an entire internal ecosystem. Their sense of superiority depends on having people beneath them. Their grandiosity requires an audience. And you, by healing, by growing, by quietly and powerfully refusing to participate anymore, took all of that away. You became evidence of something they cannot afford to believe, that they are not as powerful as they think. That someone can genuinely outgrow them and become more than they ever were in the relationship. This is not merely uncomfortable for a narcissist. This is existentially threatening. It touches the rawest wound in their entire psychological structure, the terror that underneath all the performance, They are ordinary and breakable and beatable. And you, by walking away with your dignity intact, proved it. So the final tactic is not just about getting you back. It is about restoring their internal equilibrium. It is about reestablishing that they still have power, that they can still move you. If you are finding this valuable, if something in these words is landing in a place that feels true and recognized, then I want to remind you that this channel exists to give you exactly this, every week. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Share this with someone who needs it, because this is the kind of content that can change the trajectory of someone's life. After the initial approach, the performance of growth, the carefully calibrated softness, there will almost always come a second phase. And this is where the mask begins to develop hairline fractures, if you are watching carefully. Because a genuine transformation can sustain itself indefinitely. A performance, no matter how polished, cannot. At some point, the effort required to maintain the act exceeds what they are willing to invest. And when you don't capitulate quickly enough, when your strength holds, when you respond with warmth but not surrender, the pressure begins to build behind the mask. And then you will start to see it. Small things at first. A flash of impatience when you don't respond the way they hoped. A subtle shift in tone when you maintain a boundary. A moment where the old deflection appears, dressed in new language but recognizable in its movement. They might frame their efforts as sacrifice. They might begin to suggest, gently but unmistakably, that your caution is the problem. That your inability to simply believe in their change is evidence of your damage, not theirs. This is the reframe. This is where the accountability they performed begins to redirect itself back at you. If you are not watching for it, you will absorb it. Your nervous system, already trained by years of subtle manipulation to believe that your perception is the issue, will be vulnerable to this inversion. They will suggest that your strength is actually rigidity, that your clarity is actually fear, that your refusal to immediately trust is a wound you need to heal, not a wisdom you have earned. And they will do this so smoothly, so seemingly compassionately, that it can feel like they are trying to help you, even as they are dismantling the very foundation of the strength that freed you. Do not let them redefine your strength as your pathology. This is the crux. This is the center of the final trick. Because if they can convince you that your clarity is actually damage, if they can pathologize your hard-won awareness, then they have achieved something extraordinary. They have used your healing against you. They have weaponized your growth, and you will find yourself doing the unthinkable, explaining your sanity to the person who tried to take it from you. There is another layer to this that operates almost entirely beneath conscious awareness, and it has to do with time, with history, with the chemistry of long-term emotional entanglement. The narcissist who has been with you for a significant amount of time knows you, not with curiosity and genuine interest in your inner world, but they know your wounds. They know where you are tender. They know the specific architecture of your longing, the precise shape of the love you always wanted, the exact words that move you. This knowledge was gathered not out of love, but out of utility. And now, in this final move, it becomes their most powerful weapon. When they say the right thing at the right moment, in the right tone, when it lands exactly in the center of your most unhealed place, you have to understand that this is not intuition. This is not emotional attunement. This is strategic knowledge being deployed with precision. The intimacy you shared, the vulnerability you offered, all of that became information. And information in the hands of someone who has never learned to love without controlling becomes ammunition. So when their final approach echoes your own deepest language back to you, and you feel that uncanny sense of being truly seen, what you are actually feeling is your own soul being mirrored back at you, not their love, yourself, reflected. And the feeling of being known that arises in that moment is real. It's just not coming from them. The answer to all of this is not cruelty. It is not revenge. It is not a dramatic confrontation or a righteous speech. Those things feel satisfying in imagination and are almost always counterproductive in reality. Confrontation gives them something to